Hey guys, welcome back to week 3 of the Q&A series. I don't know why I had weird pauses in there and so on. Double check where we are. Did I just say where we are? The fuck is wrong with me? Anyway, first question is from Wulfslore. Have you thought about doing an open lobby gaming session with Patreon subscribers or viewers in general? What I mean is once a month or so, just hosting a gaming session where viewers and subscribers can hop in and just game and talk with you. So I actually have done that for my 50,000 subscribers celebration day. I did a Monster Hunter stream where anybody could join in. And so that already happened, actually. It was that's on YouTube. You can watch it if you want to see how that turned out, more or less. In fact, I specifically, as part of the celebration, went out and got a new Elgato device, specifically because that one had lagless streaming, so I could play a console game without dealing with the normal latency problems. Because that's normally an issue with console games. You have to worry about the fact that the I didn't make my summons. Whoops. Normally on console games, you have to deal with the fact that there's like latency built in, where it just takes time. How do I put this? I mean, just the concept of latency, so I guess you guys mostly already understand it. But when you're streaming console games, there's a delay for the audio and video compared to your commentary, and it's a huge pain in the ass, especially since it feels like the amount of delay changes like every single time you adjust it. Like you start changing it, and you're like, okay, cool. It looks like I did a test. It looks like the delay is like 0.6 seconds or whatever, and then you'll set that stream delay into your OBS, and you'll be like, okay, cool. Now it's fixed. And then like seemingly half an hour later, it's like the delay has changed, or the next time you stream the delay has changed. And I've never really had a good reason for why, but there was a huge big pain in the ass session I had of trying to stream Dark Souls 2, specifically the DLC that's full of ashes, the Iron King. I was streaming that one day, and just constantly, and no matter what I did, people were always saying that the stream was out of sync, and I'm like, god damn it! This problem pretty much just goes away instantly the moment you're playing PC games, because everything's on your computer, and so no problems exist, basically. But the moment you're trying to stream a console game, there's just the delay it takes for the game to come from the game into your PC, which is streaming the stuff, and so on. You could do basically lagless stream if you stream via the built-in software of the console, but that stuff sucks. So like, great, the lag's gone, but now you have like a shitty interface on the screen, and you have like a weird balance with like the audio visual of like your commentary versus the game, and you have lacking control over all that stuff. That isn't great. And just to top it all off, in the case of like PlayStation 4 stuff, at the very least, I don't know anything about Xbox One really, because I barely use mine. There's all those things where like you guys will see sometimes that pop-up that comes up where it's all like, you can't record or stream this part. And so if you're using the built-in stream software, the stream will just cut out at that moment and show like a blue screen that's like, you can't stream this part. Whereas if you're using an external thing, they can't stop you. And I don't even know the justification half the time for why people say not to stream stuff. Like, maybe I could see on some level that like what was it? There was a cute thing that PT did, which is that PT cut off your stream if you got to like the big reveal at the end of PT that like, this is a teaser for Silent Hills. So like the stream would cut out, and so if you were streaming it, the people that were streaming it wouldn't see the teaser, which is a fun way to keep it under wraps for slightly longer in a game that's inherently a marketing ploy. And like in Type 0, Final Fantasy Type 0, it would cut you off from streaming during the parts with the copyright music, so even there I'm like, okay, I kind of get their logic. But I've seen games where they cut off the streaming the moment you get to any moment that's just like any story or any cutscene or even just random levels you can't stream, and I'm like, okay, you're just being a dick now, and you're kind of just making up your own rules as you go along, and this is kind of uncool. This is also not the question topic. I just got sidetracked on why I bought a new Elgato specifically for that live stream. Like, I went out to a store and had that slightly cringe moment, I suppose, where I explained to a GameStop associate that I had, I explained to a GameStop associate that I had hit 50,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, because they were asking me why I was getting this thing and stuff like that. I was like, oh yeah, you're recording this in like OBS or something? Like, they were asking questions, and I was like, oh yeah, I hit 50,000 subscribers, so I'm doing like a celebration thing of sorts. That was completely unplanned, and it kind of showed, because even while it was happening, I was like, let's see how this works, ha ha ha, I haven't tested any of this. I was like, I kind of want to do something for the 50,000 subscribers, which kind of blindsided me a little bit at least. And so I just was like, you know, one idea I could do is I could do a live stream of the game I'm playing right now, and just do the kind of grinding / optional content, and just clear out all of the side quests, basically, that I haven't been doing lately, but let people join in. And it's the current hot game, so like a bunch of people will probably be available to play with me because of the fact that, you know, it's the game that everyone's playing right now. And so that was the whole plan, more or less. And it kind of worked out. That's probably a good upgrade. There we go. So that would... Execution-wise, as far as, like, just getting it to work at all, things worked out kind of better than I was afraid they might. It kind of generally worked out, and because it was just... Like, I literally just came up with the idea to stream that morning, and I was like, oh shit, how do I execute on this idea? I was like, well, it's a console game, it's gonna have a weird, fucked up, laggy stream, and I can't do that. So, and then I was like, there's a new Elgato that has lagless pass-through, so you can actually do this correctly, as opposed to what I've had all this time, because I've had this, the Elgato, I think it's called the HD60, since, ever since Witcher 3 came out, because I had a Hauppauge at that point, and I was like, the quality seems weirdly low and it's bothering me, so I got the Elgato to make Witcher 3 a better recording quality. Also, the Hauppauge had scorned me by throwing away that entire Bloodborne recording I had that one time that required me to play all of Bloodborne again up to that point, so I could re-record that one level that was lost. That whole thing that happened. So I got the Hauppauge HD60 now, which is the one that has the lagless pass-through, but I still have the... sorry, I got the HD60S. God, naming of technology sucks. They just add a letter to things. I had the HD60, I still have it, because, you know, keep duplicate... everyone should keep duplicate hardware around in case something goes wrong. You don't want to just hope that your one copy of hardware never breaks. I think I still have my Hauppauge around. I technically have all my old glasses around, but those are less viable. But, like, I don't throw away my glasses either when I upgrade my glasses. You probably shouldn't use old glasses, though. I haven't. But, you know, those were expensive. Fuck it. But that was what happened, more or less. So I just went at it for a while. I'm gonna check really quick, because I don't remember the Monster Hunter World. Because I think it was a long-ass stream, too. It was probably like 3 hours, which isn't that long. But it might have been even longer than that. Oh yeah, 50,000... Yeah, if you want to look it up, it's Let's Play Monster Hunter World Part 52. 50,000 subscribers, audience co-op live stream. You probably don't need to write all of that. You could probably just type Monster Hunter stream or something on my channel, and then bring it up. It was chaos. So it was 3.5 hours, and people were just... in the lobby, and it definitely reinforced on some level why making content with random viewers is often not the best call. You'll notice Wanderbot plays a lot more grinding and multiplayer games than I do, so he's more likely to interact with his stream audience, but you'll notice that even he only just lets them join the lobby in a silent capacity, where they're just random characters running around in his world and helping him, but not, like, in the voice chat, generally speaking. And that's because, people do not have microphone conduct across the board, is what I've found. I found that with family, I found that with friends, I found that with, audience members and so on, is that, like, they just don't behave themselves, and they don't... They either don't care or don't have the presence of mind in many cases to pay attention to, like, what audio is like and stuff like that. I was doing a recording there's always the case, there's always the example I use with Andrew and everyone, where we had the Diablo 3 recording, where there's the Diablo 3 recording where Max just answers the phone in the middle of the live stream, in the middle of the recording, and just starts talking on his phone in front of the microphone, right there on the couch. Like, he doesn't excuse himself or anything. I'm just like, it's a show. There's a show. And there was a previous recording with Max where I played Charlie Danger with him a little bit, and all the audio was ruined because his leg was kicking nonstop right by the microphone, and so the that was like most of the audio was just his leg making sounds on the microphone, and like I'm like, no, don't, you're polluting the audio. What are you doing? I recently did a live thing with Max where we were playing Diablo 2, which is the reason I have this mod installed in the first place. And we were getting a group of like 8 people together. It's a big, like, semi-ambitious thing of getting all these people together. But you know what happens when you get like 8 people together that aren't people that generally make YouTube content together and stuff like that? Is they just make noise and so on. First of all, there was the problem of, like, there was like at least two instances of white people using the N-word, and I'm like, oh no. Like, they weren't referring to black people, they were just using the thing where they just say it, like they just address something as N-word, just as like a greeting, which I'm like, oh boy, I don't even want to figure out what level this is on, honestly. Like, but then you have like people that, like, there was one person that was like on Discord via their phone, and I'm like, you what? And so just the entire, like, Max was like, you're gonna put this on YouTube, right? And I'm like, what the no. Like, the commentary is terrible. No one's, conversations don't even really flow or anything. And then also there's this whole thing where, like, where, like, the audio's nightmare garbage, because there's like 1 or 2 people using Discord on their phone in this thing that you want to put on YouTube, supposedly. So it's like, it's just like background noise and like babies making sounds and like air conditioners and just like so many layers of bad audio happening all at the same time, where I'm like, this is alright. This is just, I can't even begin to explain the number of things not working here, and it's just things that they don't understand, and that's just how normal people live and interact with, you know, not caring about audio noise pollution and stuff like that, or how it affects this kind of thing. And that's why you don't just bring in randoms most of the time. And that was more or less my experience with playing Monster Hunter a little bit, although I think the Max stream was worse. But there was definitely just constant surprises of, like, what would happen in the audio. One of the weirder things I wasn't expecting was that, like, there was an overwhelming number of people. There was definitely, like, a few instances of, like, hey, look, there's people using the cell phone version to talk and stuff like that. At one point, I guess I didn't even know this at the time, but I guess apparently Andrew was actually, because I gave him mod powers that day, and apparently he was taking people, like, out of the chat room and, like, talking to them on the side and being like, dude, you gotta sort out whatever your microphone thing is, because no one can understand you, and we need to, like, because I was in the middle of playing and doing commentary and kind of hosting the thing, so I couldn't, like, run these kinds of things. But there was, like, so many weird layers of just, like, stuff going wrong. That was, it was an adventure. It was definitely an adventure. So it was fun. I kind of threw it all as, like, it's just a fun little aside thing. It's not really necessarily good content necessarily, but, you know, people get excited about, like, the event of it happening, and that's fun. I'm not going to look at the quality of these charms during the video. I'm just going to throw shit into my stash and sort it out between videos. So So like, I'm not against the idea of doing it entirely, because it does have a value of sorts as like it does have a sort of value as like just an event that people get excited about, because like they get to hang out with me and stuff like that, which, sure. I'd say it's a little overrated. I think the people in the Discord are thoroughly bored with me at this point, because they've been around me, and it's not as interesting as it's cracked up to be. There's so many potions, Jesus Christ. I should really sell those instead. So like, I'm not against the idea on its own. I don't know if I'd upload it or even record it. But then there is the level of like, I guess it kind of has value as like something that you can show people as like, hey, this is happening, and recording it lets you show that it's happening, which it's like can be a commercial for the event itself, I suppose. Like, it has that level of value on some level, but I get very self-conscious about a lot of stuff. I try to create somewhat quality content, and then I go on like 10-minute rambles or fuck up the content in 100 other ways and so on and whatever. But I do worry about stuff like that. That said, it could also just be totally like a people who create the stuff just know more and think about stuff more and therefore notice stuff more. Because I have found that like in many cases the Let's Play and live stream audiences are not actually that discerning for quality. Like, for a while I got away with 720p and no one really even... Like, it was incredibly rare for anyone to notice that I was doing 720p 30. When I switched to 720p 60, there was some, hurrah, it's in 60 frames per second now. When I switched from 720 to 1080, no one noticed or said anything. When I made my big transition, because my new computer had higher, no, it wasn't my new computer, it was, specifically, the new version of Vegas had GPU acceleration, so I could render 1080p 60 videos and it wouldn't take hours and hours and stuff like that, so suddenly it was feasible to render my 6+ videos every day in 1080 60 out of nowhere, because I have a 1070, NVIDIA graphics card and so on, so like I could just crank this shit out. When I switched to 1080, no one commented on it. I was like, oh, okay. And I've also noticed that, like, when I watched, there was a time I live streamed Lords of the Fallen, and you could not hear my commentary over the game's audio, and like you could hear it enough that you knew I was talking, so you knew something was wrong, but you could not make out what I was saying over the game. And I streamed for like 5 hours, and no one commented on it a single time. And there's all these times where I go into like a Wanderbot stream and the audio is like going, like something's desperately wrong with it and no one will say anything, and I'm like, what? How is nobody pointing out the problem? So it could be totally be like Let's Players and so on getting in their own heads about their standards, ideas of standards, and then maybe we're the only ones that freak out about the kind of commentary that happens, which you can watch the live stream to know what I'm talking about. But like, I think Bird commented on it. Wander definitely commented on it. I commented on it, and Andrew commented on it, I think, where we're just all like, yeah, that was terrible video. Like, everyone's just shouting random things. At one point, I got what really surprised me is first you just have the people that have like the bad room noise and stuff like that. But what shocked me at one point is that the people in the chat room at one point created a second lobby where they were going on their own Monster Hunter missions. And so my group was hunting monsters, and then another group was hunting other monsters in another world, and both groups were in the same chat room just talking over each other, and I'm like, oh no. You guys didn't think to be like, hey, let's move down to the other chat room on Discord so that our group can communicate. And it's like, I'm like, oh no. So now my group has like this weird noise pollution where like two separate groups are talking about two completely different things at the same time, and it's like, as somewhat expected, people quickly got bored of me. There was not a lot of like active like Q&A or people actively wanting to have conversations with me, as you'd expect from an event about, hey, hang out with me. It actually quickly just became a bunch of people all hanging out and playing Monster Hunter, and oftentimes I actually couldn't get a word in edgewise, and it was a really weird experience. I'm pretty used to being ignored and overshadowed in basically every social situation, but when it's literally an event about people wanting to be in a lobby with me, it was pretty amazing to be like, oh, huh, this is happening. I don't know what to make. Am I doing something wrong? I don't know what to do in this situation. And as per usual, when I'm surrounded by large circles of strangers, I pretty much just kind of quietly just sit through it, and I'm still a massive introvert, regardless of how much YouTube exposure I get. So when I have an awkward social situation, I just kind of, I'm like, huh, this is the new norm now. We'll see how today goes. But we had very different. It was interesting. This probably sounds mean or something, or like bitter or something, which is not the point. I'm just giving the hopefully relatable account of what the day was like on this weird, like, first of all, it's really weird for an introvert just to throw an event about, hey, hang out with me live, aren't I great? Give me all the attention. And I'm like, I'm not any of these things. No, I don't want to do that. It's all of my instincts scream against that idea. But then to go through with doing it and then be like, oh no, it's kind of not working, is like it's a real weird experience. But that said, yeah, like I did the stream and the people were like, yeah, this is great, we should do it again. And it was like the general commentary at the end, and I don't even remember there being complaints on the video itself necessarily. I just remember me being like, that was a disaster, and Wander was like, oh my god, what happened? And Andrew and everyone was like, that was just chaos. Basically every creator I knew was seeing that stream as some kind of failure, while everyone in it seemed to be cool with it. So it's like an imperceptible situation where like I don't even know how to look at it. It's so weird. But I could potentially do hangouts on Patreon. I don't know how to orchestrate it necessarily. Like you suggest a game idea, but one of the things that comes to mind for me is actually there are like Google Hangout type things, or like the private live streams and stuff like that, where we could do just a live Q&A. As far as games go, first of all, for just live streams in general, you have the issue of like, if I try to support it as a Patreon perk, then I want to try to like actually make it accessible to people, hopefully. But then I have the issue of like, I have an international audience, so I'm like, oh shit. So when do I live stream then? Because everyone works and sleeps and so on at different times. Like, I would imagine that Saturday is the best day to do it on, because of the fact that that cuts in half the at least for a lot of people. Obviously there's a lot of people that work whatever the fuck hours their job decides to give them, and weekends mean nothing to them, which is unfortunate, but that's real. But for a lot of people work during the week. So like a Saturday is a good day to stream, because you effectively cut in half the limitation time, because normally people have their 8 hours of sleep if they're, you know, being idealistic, and also 8 hours of work probably, and that's 2/3 of the 24-hour cycle. And so at that point, like, if you do that during the week, if people are working and sleeping, then like it's very hard to find the 8-hour gap to do the stream during that satisfies the most people. But on Saturday, presumably that's like 2/3 of all time is now open for most people. Like the amount of overlap presumably doubles on Saturdays is what I would guess. You still have to deal with the fact that it's international and it's a mess, and there's people that have jobs that can't get to those kinds of events and so on, but it's at least closer to working out, is my logic at least. So that'd probably be the best day to do it. maybe even instead of one of these streams one day, it'd be like, instead of doing a Q&A video, I'm gonna do like a live stream or a hangout thing, and then we'll record that and put that up or something. Which would probably go up on like a Sunday then, messing up the schedule because normally these go up on Saturday, but that's fine. Then you have the, but then ignoring that part, just the filter of trying to deal with international audiences and where everyone's located timeline-wise and what their work is like and their time zones and so on. Because I'd want to like cast a wide net to get the most of my be available for as many of my Patreon followers as possible. Then you have the additional issue of the video game part. I guess you could. I mean, I guess there's free games. Because the ideal thing to pick would probably be a game that is free, that has international servers, in order to make it so that one, everyone just already has it because they don't have to buy it, and two, everyone can just join regardless of what country they're in. Because a lot of games have servers that limit who can join with who at times, and then you have to be able to purchase the game. If it's on console, you're limiting people. I do not have a lot of experience doing the equivalent of like planning parties and events, so I'm like my head's like spinning at all the different ideas involved and what to do there. But it's an idea. It's definitely one of those things that makes me think about like how nice it must be to have a staff for some of these YouTubers. Like Philip DeFranco has his daily show and everything, but then sometimes live streams and sometimes like the vlog videos or whatever, but like he can hand off things to be edited, or someone else is setting up the live stream an event and he shows up or something. And so like you gotta, it's real interesting to be like the focal point of a thing and also be the one that organizes it and moderates it and so on live. But we could potentially have discussion threads about this or something, or if there's enough interest, we could probably do like polls where people talk about what parts of the day they're most available and what parts of the week they're most available or something, and then ideas of what games it could potentially be. And maybe 3 months from now, after 100 polls have happened, we can have some idea of how to organize this event. I don't. As far as just an event goes, it's probably fine. Schedule-wise, I do keep pretty busy, but I have generally been working around the schedule disruption already, in that I have had my Tuesday recordings with Andrew, and those are over now because Andrew's moving. So that was my whole day every Tuesday. I would just lose my Tuesday every single day. And so that was a big old schedule disruption that's kind of gone now. So inviting a new one instead of just giving an equilibrium is not. It's an option. I could do that. There's also a mass. I thought this was going to be a 30-second answer, and I kept finding more things to talk about, and it's like a problem I have. I honestly thought I should just stand in town and answer this question real quick, because I thought I was just going to be like say really quick things, but then. I guess at first when I was thinking of answering the question, I wasn't thinking about the Monster Hunter example. I was just thinking about, like, could this happen? Kinda, sure. And I just voiced 1,000 anxieties about video quality and so on, and how that gets shifted by inviting a bunch of people in to hang out with you, and so on. Which is that's a very real thing. It gets kind of weird. And it's not me trying to judge people, it's just literally like people think about different things and value different things, and like it's hard to even condition people to think about that kind of stuff on the fly, and you have to like reprogram people to some extent. It's weird. Like people get mad that Andrew burps into the microphone or something, and I'm like, oh boy, you don't even know how much worse everyone else is on their microphone conduct. Although I also don't understand the burp thing. I know a lot of I know a lot of content creators that have burps in their show, and I don't react to it at all. Like I don't know why people have strong reactions to it. But also some people, but then every now and then people are like, "How dare you take the Lord's name in vain?" is a real comment I get every now and then, and I'm like, "Oh, you're just from a different world, okay." But yeah, that's my conclusion on this, I guess. I am tentatively okay with the idea. I'm not sure how to organize it, or what game it would be, or when it would be, or who would be allowed in. Generally speaking, it would probably be on the Discord, because that's where I did it last time. Feel free to watch the Monster Hunter stream to see how it went last time when I let random people in. It'd probably be a Patreon specific thing, because I think I'm only going to do it open to the public for everybody ever again if it's I think I'll only ever do that again if it's like a milestone for subscriber count, because doing that, I think that was not a great video content, and also I kind of have to put my whatever Let's Play it is, I kind of have to put on pause and not make any progress of any kind, because I want that video, for the people that don't like it, for it to be optional, so they can skip that video and go to the next one instead of just sit there and put up with it because vital progress was made they have to watch, but also it's a bunch of random people they don't know yelling about things. But yeah, options are out there. It's a potential thing we could do instead of the Q&A 1 week or something like that. Yeah. Riley Helms asks, what made you have an interest in geology, and if you could go back in time, would you choose a different field of study or line of work? What would it be and why? So, I kind of don't have an interest in geology. It's weird. It's fine. So growing up, I played a lot of video games. Shocker. And so I wanted to make video games like everybody else of my generation, basically. Like everyone wants to, I'm gonna be a game designer. And so you know, you go through school, and you're just kind of raised to go through school. Like in my family, it was just kind of taken for granted. You're going to go to school, you're going to try to get good grades, and then try to get into a good college because you got grades, and that's just like how I was raised, and so on. Not even very hard. None of this was like the stereotypical hard-ass parents or anything where like, oh no, what a hard life. Like it really wasn't a big deal any of the way through. It just was like the smart thing to do. And I listened more, my brother listened less, and so on. And so I just had to go to college. Like that's just what was going to happen. My parents were saving some money. It was not nearly enough, but I got California like state grants. I got what was the first grant? Because I got a 2,000 on the SAT, which was I don't have a great spectrum for what the numbers even mean half the time, but it was better than my friend who got into a UC Davis, which is a much more expensive, higher level school than what I went to, because I just went to Sacramento State, which the UCs are, in California, the UCs are just higher than the state colleges, which are higher than the community colleges that you basically get into for free. I learned that the hard way, by the way, because at one point I went to a community college, and because I was like, I'm just gonna get what was it? Calculus? Was it calculus? I was like, I'm gonna get calculus out of the way during the summer between semesters, because calculus, I'd like to just focus on it and just get it over with, and not have to juggle that with other subjects. And it seemed like a good idea, and I passed the class, no biggie, and then I transferred that to my state college, and it didn't count. It counted as some shitty math that I'd never heard of before. And I'm like, cool, now I've got a credit for whatever that math is, and I have to take calculus again. I took calculus 3 times. One, I took it during high school, and didn't do great. It was the only time I've ever not done great at a math. It was mainly because, and I chalk it up to being a failure of the school system, and Let's Player blames something besides themselves for their mistakes, right? No, I don't mean like that. You hear me out here. When I talk about this, I mean the fact that like by the end of my semester of calculus in high school, I understood calculus. I had that shit down. I was good, but because of the fact that I had bad test grades at the beginning of the semester, that meant that I was a bad calculus student, and I got a grade that said I didn't know how calculus, and that's stupid. School's stupid. School is very stupid. If I finish a semester and at the end I've successfully learned the material, that means I pass. That should be how it works. You could make some people can and do make some cases for like the idea that like, well, it's preparation for real life, and in real life you have to just actually do your job all the time and not just at the end have one or whatever. But if the goal is to educate, I can't help but feel like if you succeed at the educating by the end, then you did it, you know? Redemption story. In fact, the whole way where the whole way they process grades, where if you make mistakes early on, they can permanently hinder your progress for the rest of the semester, kind of just encourages you to give up in school. And that's what people do, is they just give up at learning certain things because they were accused by the school of not being good enough from that point on. And so it's like, well, they said I can't pass, I might as well stop trying. It's like, yeah, it's a great system. Good job. It's like, no child left behind unless they fuck up the first test, in which case, fuck them. We did it. We did it, schools in America. What a great structure. Am I bitter? I'm bitter. So I didn't take the AP test because I wasn't confident, because they were all like, you fucked up, you suck. And also the AP test happens before the semester is even actually all the way over, so that's not great. And also you have to spend money on the AP test. I took like 3 AP tests, but I did not take the one for calculus. For those who don't know, the AP test is the test you can take in high school, which for those who don't know, high school is the school that Americans go to from ages like 14 to 18. So it's not like, we've been over this discussion in the previous episode, I think, about how it's really confusing because other people call it other things, and they use the same names for different things just to make it worse, like football. Yeah, it's a shit show. Goodbye, Andariel, you weird thing that I can't tell if I need to pixelate or not, but you know, it's on Patreon, no one, it's zoomed out. It's fine. That's dramatic. But like, there's a, how do I put this? Oh goddamn it, there's so many items here. I'm overburdened. How do I put this? So I think I took English and physics or something else. Like I took a bunch of AP tests, and the way that works is that there's the public school, like there's the schools that you take, there's the schools you go to that everyone has to go to as an American, like, child. You have to go to school. That's just how being a kid works, more or less. Like, you have to seek out alternatives if you're gonna want to go like down the homeschooling routes or whatever. But generally go to elementary school when you're like 6 years old or whatever the hell, then middle school, then high school, and that's all one continuous thing basically. The only real difference between them is that they're separated into 3 separate buildings, usually in 3 different locations. And by which I mean, by locations I don't mean on the same campus, I mean they're separated usually like to different parts of the city, basically. And it's just, I think the purpose is basically just to keep different age groups away from each other. Like you're grouping people by age, which there's a logic to that. I think that's more or less the entire reason why the different schools exist. Am I running out of these? No. And so by the time you hit high school, certain students have separated very severely in how much they in like their level of aptitude, basically, or how well they're succeeding at school. And so you start separating them. Like you have like remedial courses, you have regular level courses, or like average courses, or whatever you want to call them. Then you have honors courses and AP courses, where honors courses are just the harder version of a class usually, but AP courses are specifically, they're meant to be college credit courses. And calculus is an AP course no matter what, at least at the school that I went to. That's just how it exists as a class. And you're basically just taking a college course during high school because you've exceeded the level of like what actually is allotted by high school, like what their goal is to teach you. And they're like, well shit, we still have this kid that we gotta deal with. I guess we'll teach him college courses now, is basically what they do. And I took a few of those because I just always I just did good in college and high school by default, and I largely did good in high school in college by default. Like I think we went over this in the previous video, where like I haven't really historically had to try, and I don't know what to make of that, but that's just been a thing with me and education a lot of the time, which is actually a bad thing in a lot of ways, because it means I also kind of don't know how to try in some of these things. So when I've actually had a few times in school where things go very bad because things are not going well in the class, and I'm not learning the material, or something's not clicking for me or something, and I actually don't necessarily totally know what to change about my behavior or whatnot to really, or even like have the capacity to like really stick it out and figure out the thing. This is hard to articulate because it's trying to explain human limitations and stuff like that, but because I succeeded by default so often during school, I am often less capable of figuring out how to fix problems when the problems are my own limitations, which is a thing that people kind of learn potentially from struggling in school, I think, is like kind of part of that. This is all very weird to talk about. So I took several AP classes. I did not take the AP. I took the AP class of not geology, of calculus, because it only exists as an AP course. But I did not take the AP test at the end because I did not believe in my ability to actually pass that. So I thought I'd just be throwing like $100 out the window to not pass a test. And frustratingly, the AP tests happened before the class is even over, so like I think it happened before everything finally clicked for me, because I totally got every wrong word is in my head. I almost said geology, I almost got college, and I almost said geology and geometry, and I'm like, god damn it, say calculus. Why can't you think of the word calculus today? I've paused on the word calculus repeatedly during this story, and I don't know why. I did like geometry more than calculus because I enjoyed calculating areas and shapes and dealing with stuff like that over derivatives and integrals, which basically I struggled to understand. I think it's that I struggled to understand derivatives, but then by the time we were dealing with integrals, then derivatives clicked for me, and then I figured out intervals because they were just another direction to take that logic in. But by the time that happened, I was like 60% through the class, and I had basically failed already. And so the best I could do is like get it up to like a D or a C or something, which is like one of the only bad grades I ever got. But getting bad grades in a hard class is like, yeah, I'm like, I don't even know where to feel on the spectrum of like good or bad on that half the time. It affects your GPA, which is not great. You get lower GPA as a result of oh, there's a two-handed weapon, damn it. If you take a harder class and fail at it, you lower your GPA, which is a really frustrating thing to know, because your GPA is kind of like one of the things that affects how you look as a student, and you can hurt it by trying harder in some cases, because you dared to go closer to harder things, and so you kind of like Icarus for a bit, and that's like frustrating. Oh god damn it. Item comparisons are annoying to me. Fuck it. Sometimes I'd literally just give up and just put on the thing that is more expensive and hope it was better. And I don't necessarily do that when I'm playing alone, but when I'm doing a thing that people are watching, I'm just like, I can't just pause this right now to crunch theory craft numbers. Yes, you are Deckard Cain.
Good evening.
So as far as geology goes, I was kicking at the fact that like I was just raised to go to college, and that's just part of how this went. Is just you're supposed to go to school and succeed at that so that you can then go to college and get a good job. It's one of those things like God or Santa Claus or whatever, where you're just told it at a young age and you just believe the authority figures that are telling you about it, and you just kind of go with it and you don't question it very much. And boy, should I have questioned it, because the end result was more or less that you don't just get a job because you went to college. That's not how any of this works. It turns out that you go to college and then you get dumped out on your ass, but you have a piece of paper now and a lot of debt in most people's cases, but not mine, because I didn't go into debt from college, which is the only reason I'm out. One of the only reasons I'm alive right now. I would have been in trouble probably. I think I already went into the why I didn't go into debt previously in the previous episode, but that was a whole thing on its own level. So I got through college luckily, basically, and oh shit, that's a high level amethyst right there. This is too full. I need that damn cube. So as far as why I took geology specifically, so I guess we should rewind a bit, because I did mention before the fact that I originally wanted to be a game developer. And when I wanted to be a game developer, I was like, okay, well, it's not really a game development program that I know of, and I didn't get into like a special cool school or anything. Computer science? It's not like I was surrounded by people that could tell me what to do with my life, because while my parents were both people who were like, yeah, go to college, obviously, neither of them had finished college. They had both, I think both of my parents went to college for a little bit and dropped out. And so they both probably saw it as like this thing that they failed at, and so they wanted me to go succeed at the thing that they failed at or something, and they were believing the hype that society gives you, that going to college just sort of magically solves your problems and gives you a good job and you just succeed at life automatically because you went to college, and so on. And none of that was really true. But also, I've never felt a calling, really. I've never felt a vocation calling, ever, really. I've just existed, and I've had hobbies and things I like to do, and also need to eat, and was raised to go to school. So when high school was ending, I was like, I don't have a plan. I don't have a thing I want to do. I don't have like a lifelong calling. I don't have those childlike dreams to become a firefighter or whatever. Like nothing about this is demanding that I particularly do anything. Like I just know that I have to get a job. Or more immediately, I know that I'm going to college now and I have to pick something. So I was like, computer science? Sure. Like, it's computer science will maybe lead towards the game development job that I think I want. And if not, I'll just have a job where I work on computers, which seems like an inevitable outcome, right? That's probably a good choice for me. And so I'll become a programmer, like everybody else I know. Well, that I know now, not back then. That didn't work out. I kind of hated programming. It might have just been part of the college context of programming, but for me the thing about programming was that you quickly become a professional proofreader, basically. And I was not, like, I enjoyed typing the program up and like working out the logic and having a plan and like trying to solve the problem that way, which is probably why video games that are analogs to programming are actually still can still be fun for me. Like, it can be fun for me to hop into a game like Space Chem and screw around with like trying to solve a problem, but the reality of real programming is something that is way less enjoyable, because we were doing JavaScript. Which I've heard people react in not the fondest ways towards me saying that. Finding out that my computer science program opened us with JavaScript of all things, but that's what we went into. Is we were learning Java, and it was just miserable, because basically what would happen is my learning experience in every semester was basically we would get a new assignment, and it would be an assignment we had like 2 weeks to work on, is to have a working program that served whatever purpose, basically, as usually how the class was structured. And I would basically, I feel like I would usually type up the entire thing in like a day or two, like almost immediately. I'd have a program that more or less did everything I wanted to do. Then I would basically spend the next week and a half just trying to find the goddamn problem in it. Like, what's wrong with this thing? And oftentimes it was like a thing where like it wouldn't compile at all. And so like I couldn't do the thing where like, I'd want to do the thing where I just like run step by step through the process and figure out like, oh, here's where I went wrong, or here's where I went wrong. Oh, okay, so it's putting out the wrong number because of this or something. But like, I couldn't even question the logic of the program because something fundamentally was breaking it somewhere, and that would so often happen. And trying to fix those problems was actually the least fun thing ever. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do a whole. I don't know if I want to do a life of this. I don't know if this is something I want to stick with forever. So I kind of was shying away from that. I didn't. I think I got 3 semesters in, and just it was not going well, and I kind of just backed out. I was like, you know what? Let's maybe to take stock. I don't feel that strongly towards this vocation, this path to take. Let's maybe not give in to the sunk cost fallacy. Let's maybe just let my previous efforts die and move on. And so I did. I took 1 semester off, and I was like, I'll just do general education. Because in at least American colleges, there's a thing called general education that's just a required part of your degree when you're getting your bachelor's degree, which is basically the first, it's like the first major degree to go for, basically, before college gets really weird. Basically, you'll enter a bachelor's program for like computer science or whatever, and they'll tell you, here are the classes you have to take to finish the degree, and it'll be like a list of like, you know, like basically the tech tree of computer science, which it'll in some majors it's just a straight line of take these classes. In some majors, it's like a forking tree where the first couple classes are all the same, but then after that it branches into 2 spots, and you kind of have to take 2 groups of classes in parallel, or you kind of pick a specialization. Or in geology's case, there's like a linear sequence of... In geology's case, it was mostly a linear sequence of classes you have to take in order. There was a couple classes that happened in parallel with each other, like there was mineralogy and sediment... What they called the sediment class? It wasn't sedimentology or anything like that. I don't remember what they called that class. And I think there was like, mineral petrology and something else also happened in parallel with each other. But then there was optional classes, and you just had to pick X number of them, basically. They'd be like, pick 3, and you could pick from like a bunch of different optional classes, and I went with like hydrogeology and paleontology, which is where the Wolf paper happened, was during paleontology. And hydrogeology I took because just the word around town was that if you take hydrogeology, that it's directly applicable to actual jobs, so you should consider doing that. I think there was also oh yeah, I took volcanology, which is also one of the optional ones, but you had to, but like semi-optional ones. There might have been like, I think there was a mining class, but it only happened every other year, and so you had to just be available at the right time and then get into it before it filled up or something. Like that kind of stuff happened. Basically, imagine there's a list of things you have to do, and there's a side list of things that you have to pick from. That was like, pick 3 or something like that, and that's more or less what you had to do to get through. And then in addition to that, there is my pets are dead, and that's bad because this one gives me a bonus. In addition to that, there was there we go. What am I trying to say? There's the general education, which is what I was trying to explain in the first place before I got into the specifics of the mainline courses. Because I don't know what the idea is. Maybe the idea is to make you a well-rounded individual, or maybe the part of me cynically just thinks that like it's also like the school wants to make the degree take way longer so they can get more money out of you, which probably both are true. Might have been that one was the original idea and the other one is the current capitalistic integration of that idea, which both can be true. Hooray! But basically, you have to take a lot of classes, and basically all the classes that exist at college kind of fit into like a category. They give it like a letter and a number or something like that, and you'll just be like, you have to take these kinds of classes, and you can just pick any class that fits in that category. Like they'll be like, you have to take a cultural class, an economic class, and like a bunch of other different things. And a lot of them are actually the entry-level classes of other majors. So like when you're taking the first class of geology, you're in there with like a couple hundred other people, because taking entry-level geology qualifies as general education, but then the moment you go into the next class of geology that's required, suddenly your entire major is 30 people and you're one classroom of people, which was cool because I got to hang out with the same people for like 2.5 years while I was going through my major, because it was just the same people were in the classes with me every single time, and we just all hung out and knew each other by name and everything, because our entire major was one classroom of people, basically. You know, by which I mean when I say that, I mean the one classroom of people was just that was our year of the major. Obviously there were people that were a year ahead of us and a year ahead of them and so on. It wasn't like the entirety of geology was exclusive, like every professor was collectively teaching 30 people in total. That's not it. But it was just that, like, that was just my group passing through, is that we fit into one room, which is bizarre. That was strange. I haven't had that experience since when I took German in high school, because all the every other language is more popular in American high schools apparently, and so there was a few Latin classes, a ton of Spanish classes, because we're in California. People actually speak Spanish here often. It's actually useful to know. But when I was a kid, I was like, pronouncing Spanish, I can't do it. I'll do German. That seems way more pronounceable. And so that's basically my shitty thought process as like a 14-year-old making life decisions. And that's why I took German. And yeah, also German for me was like 25 kids. Or more specifically, it was like just over 30 in the first year, and then you lose people every time you take another German class. So like some people don't choose to go to the next one each time, so we just kept losing more and more. So by the time you get to German 4, it's like 15 students. This is especially true due to the fact that if you're trying to graduate high school, you're required to take at least in our school at the time or whatever, you're required to take 2 semesters of any foreign language. And if you want to get into college, you're required to take 3 semesters of any given language. So most people stick it out for 2 semesters. A lot of people drop off after the 2nd semester, and then a lot of people drop off after the 3rd semester, because you don't have to take 4 semesters for any reason other than just to take another semester of a foreign language, basically. But like I was on my shit though, so I took my 3 semesters of German, and I took all those AP tests and the honors classes, and so like I just found that I didn't have to take a bunch of classes in college, which helped. And when I showed up, I tested out of English because I just fucking effortlessly spewed out a half-assed essay really quickly when they were like, how good are you at writing? And I was like, fucking have at it, bro, and here's my paper. And they're like, you don't have to take English classes while you're here. I'm like, all right. Cool. You do have to take 1 intensive writing course, which is a weird checkbox. It's not a category. Everything else is categories, but there's one checkbox version, which is that you have to take 1 intensive writing class at some point while you're in college, and it's just a class that assigns a lot of writing, basically, and it could be of any field, because it's not like there is not the intensive writing class. It is just you go take some class that happens to have intensive writing in it, and that just fulfills the checkbox. That's one checkbox on the series of you getting all your GE done, and so on. Everything else is other stuff. My spirit wolf, he keeps dying and I can't summon him because he requires mana to summon. And I don't want to put more points into Spirit Wolf because Dire Wolf comes later, and you can't. It seems like a waste of points to put points into Spirit Wolf right now. So I had to take one intensive writing class, but aside from that, I never took a single English class in all of college, and the only math class I took was when I took calculus for the 3rd time. I never finished that story, huh? I kind of did. I sidetracked into the AP stuff, but I took calculus in high school. Didn't get it until right at the end where I totally got it, but at that point it was too late. Then I was like, you know what, I don't want to take math during college. College has me busy enough, and math also keeps you busy. Let's do math during summer. So I went to a community college to take math, and I passed it with flying colors. And then I transferred it to my college, and it didn't count as that class. And I'm like, I don't need like any math my transcripts. I specifically need calculus because I'm doing STEM fields. Like, if you're in STEM fields, you need calculus, basically. You can't just, like, you can't get other dumb maths that don't count. So I had to take calculus again during college, and then pass it again, which was just infuriating, but I got that over with. Hooray! That was fun, to take the same class 3 times after a lifelong career of never taking any class more than once. So anyway, as far as my actual, to go back to the linearity of this narrative that never existed, when I quit out of computer science, I was like, okay, I'll take 1 semester of GE. Right, I got sidetracked because I was trying to explain GE to all the people that don't know what GE is or don't have the same structure of school as I do and so on. Which, by the way, GE was fun because I took the dumbest thing in every category, basically. Like, one of the things I took was there was like a cultural requirement and stuff like that, and one of the ones I took there was magic, witchcraft, and religion, which was an entire class about just an entire class about past religions and past and like people, cultures, ideas of magic and stuff like that. I got to learn about like where vampires come from, and we did the Salem witch trial, of course. And I got to learn about things like voodoo zombies, the original zombie that inspired all the other zombies and stuff like that. And then also lots of religious things. I read a book called The Reluctant Messiah, I think is what it was called, or The Reluctant Prophet. And that answers the question of, like, if Jesus could walk on water, could he swim in land? Because that book features at one point characters swimming in land. That was a weird book. I don't really remember it very well. But I would just take weird classes because I would find the strangest thing that filled each, like, letter requirement for my degree for GE, and I would just find something fun to do with it. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Like, I took graphic design, which actually helped me with this because of all the thumbnails I have to do. Like, I've been working with images. Admittedly, I already took graphic design in high school too, so it was kind of redundant. I just like having an excuse to have a class where you Photoshop things. That's fun. I did stuff like that a lot. I took political philosophy and things like that. Like, that was a GE class for me because I wasn't like a philosophy major, but it filled a particular requirement and worked towards things. I took geography, which is a weird thing, but I couldn't find a particularly fun thing to fill that particular field, so that's what I ended up with. So I did this whole semester of just obliterating my entire GE requirements. I need water. I'm sorry. I've been neglecting my water. And during these, the non-stop talking is, like, almost dangerous. Mall, no. When do I unlock these guys? 2 more levels. Blah. Alright. More lycanthropy for you. So I had a whole semester where I just had a super full schedule and it was exclusively GE. None of it was important major classes, but it was all the stuff I had to do to graduate in the long term. And concerningly, I finished that semester and I still didn't have a job, not a job. I still didn't have a plan of what I wanted to do next. I did not have a particular major that called to me. It's not like I took a random class and that inspired me to keep going down that avenue or anything. I didn't really have any particular draw. So here's the amazing fucking Russian roulette that led to me taking geology. I was sitting there and I was brainstorming with my mom. We're just talking about, like, shit I can do with my life, basically. And I'm sitting there like, well, I liked physical science classes in high school, you know, be in a lab and, like, study various things. There's a lot of them in high school. Like, there was ones that were just called science, which is great. Other people talked about having, like, a mineralogy class or some kind of, like, geology class in their high school, which I did not have, actually. So that wasn't there for me. But I like the idea of working in labs or screwing around and doing the the physical science studying stuff always was interesting to me. Because despite the fact that I had an aptitude for English, I didn't particularly have an interest in none of the English vocations called to me as much. Like, I didn't want to be a journalist, but I also didn't necessarily want to be a writer. And those are most of the English vocations that come to mind, actually, are basically those. And I was like, I don't know about either of these ideas. I don't really want to... I was already kind of cynical towards journalism already, and the people that do it, which is very easy to be, given how, you know, everything about journalism is handled. And I didn't like the pressure idea of being a writer that has to, like, produce just for themselves. Like, the idea of like an author or something was like terrifying. Like, you just have to come up with stuff, and it has to come from basically nowhere. Like, you just manifest content essentially, and I'm like, that's a terrifying way to lead your entire life, right? Haha, wink wink. So I wasn't psyched about that idea. So while I always did well in English, I wasn't particularly drawn to the idea of, like, pursuing English. But I always did well in science classes, and I enjoyed them. And I was like, I'm not even entirely sure what scientists do job-wise, but, like, I could give it a shot. Why not, you know? Let's do this shit. And so that's more or less how I landed on the idea of physical science, and the amazing logic that led to... Oops, I lost my vendor. Oh, wait, I should hire a new ally anyway, because these ones have auras. I don't remember which ones have which, honestly. I'm just gonna go combat, but a high level one. There we go. The Act 2 mercenaries give you auras, so they're just kind of better anyway. So I don't need this bow around anymore. But I didn't have any particular draw towards any vocation. So I just went with physical science because I liked physical science, and so the dumb plan here is we just went through the physical science majors and saw which ones I had already taken the most GE for, because every physical science has subtly different requirements for what you need in order to get that degree over with. And up until then, I had largely been taking my GE based on computer science. And being a STEM field, computer science is largely similar to all the other science classes as far as what you need to graduate. So I was already having an advantage there, and so that was going to largely be okay. But I needed to figure out for sure where I wanted to go with that stuff, and I didn't really know. And so we just looked through to find which one I had the most stuff already done for, and lo and behold, it was geology. Da, da, da. That's why I became a geologist, is literally, I don't have any particular drive or motivation or, like, inspiration to spend my life this way, but, you know, the fucking the clock's ticking. It's time to pick my classes for the next semester, and I already took one semester off from having a major, so time to pick a major. And as try as I might, I just wasn't drawn to any of the majors, so I just picked one. And figured, hey, worst case scenario, I've wasted another semester on a major I don't want to pursue, but at least I will have been working towards something. And if I choose to not go with geology, then, you know, I still did more GE that semester. It's just, I should start down the path of one of these majors. Otherwise, the longer I wait, the longer it'll take to finish a major. Because if I wait until I'm sure about a major to start a major, then great. Now that you've started the major, you still have to take all the classes in order. Like, you can't just take, like, if a major requires like 10 classes or whatever the hell that are all specific to that major, you can't just be like, well, I finished all of the rest of college, I'll just take all 10 classes over the course of 2 semesters, right? Just fill my schedule up with it. Like, that doesn't work that way. The classes have prerequisites which are each other. So getting through a major tends to take like 2.5 years because of the fact that they're a sequence. Oh, I found Radamant. I almost said Ramadan. I found Radamant, and he's pretty adamant about me dying in a sewer. Ha. So yeah, that's the amazing story behind how I picked, what the fuck? Behind how I picked geology is I basically drew it out of a hat, kind of. Not really. I just picked the thing that I was closest to graduating from after applying the filter of physical science, because that seemed more appealing than other things. And and I got through it, and I enjoyed my time with it, and I learned a lot of things, and I like that I learned those things, which I probably would have liked that I learned those things if it was anything, really. I do like school, generally speaking. I don't like the part where it judges you, often inaccurately, based on criteria that don't actually work, but people can't think of anything better, I guess. But going to school is enjoyable. I do understand why people go to school when they already have a degree. Like the idea that like there's people that already have a degree and they're already established, they already have a career, and in some cases these people even already have like millions of dollars. Like you hear about millionaires and actors and stuff going to college seemingly just because, and I am actually like, I totally get that, because college is actually kind of neat to just hang out and go to a thing periodically to just learn a bunch of stuff. And this guy's just gonna teach you about a bunch of stuff that he's like kind of dedicated his life into learning. I need to pick up antidotes. I'm an idiot. Like no good reason for why the fact that I'm about to die. Fuck! I forgot how strong I almost said Ramadan. I forgot how strong Radamant's fucking poison is. Jesus. Go away. But yeah, I lost my train of thought a little bit. I'm disorganized this episode as far as I can tell. It's not going great. I'm not super proud of my on-topic-ness at the moment. Not a stamina potion, an antidote. Jesus, why does he have the strongest poison ever? I'm gonna run around until I find something, I guess. But, I lost the thread. I'm sorry. I completely lost the thread. Where was I? I was... whatever, you guys get the gist already. I explained that I just picked a thing. And the classes are oh no, I was explaining the idea of like, yeah, how I get like, yeah, people going to college just for fun. I totally get, because it's nice to just know things. It's fun to just learn things. It's privileged as fuck. It's super privileged to just be casually like, yeah, I'm just gonna go back to college, put my life kind of on hold. Like, it's a huge time investment to go to college courses. Oh, there's an antidote right there. God damn it. Well, now I'm prepared. It's a huge investment, and that's why you often hear about like these actors and athletes going back to college for funsies and stuff like that, because they can just casually do that, and that's why they get away with it. But like, yeah, I get why they do it, because it's a really fun thing to do. Where's my antidote? There it is. And you feel enriched, and like you're improving yourself and stuff like that, and you can use that information all over places. You never know where it'll manifest. I would almost certainly be a person who would use my college degree as part of my YouTube job, no matter what. Or at least I would try to on some level, because just you gaining specialized knowledge that you can give to other people is a fun thing to have. It's an enjoyable experience, and it's just an all-around good time, you know? So I like knowing things, and I like helping other people know things because I know things, and so on. And so that's why I share little things that show up, and it just happens that, you know, in level design and increased graphical fidelity, geologic formations tend to show up in video games more and more, as just a part of the fact that, that's just where people go with it. People are like, I gotta make a level, I don't know, I'll look around in real life. I'll draw that, and then they draw that, and they put that real life thing in their game. That's like the logic behind it, more or less. And just I can be like, I know where that is. I can tell you what they looked at when they made that, because that's a real thing. And it's more or less the whole premise behind all that shit. But yeah, I do not have a calling to geology. I didn't even have that strong of a calling to my previous thing, beyond the fact that I liked video games, so I liked the idea of maybe I could make video games. Sounded like a pretty alright time. And that went nowhere. Hooray.
Good day.
And now I'm a YouTube person on accident, because I was making YouTube videos while I was in college. Started college in late 2008, started my YouTube channel in late 2011 with Andrew, and just made YouTube videos because I could, and then slowly that started getting momentum. So then I'm like, well, I don't want to stop doing this thing. Maybe a bit of that sunk cost fallacy I was talking about escaping from earlier, but at the same time I feel like it's like a thing where, like, unlike those degrees that I was just taking for the sake of it because I was supposed to, I didn't necessarily have an attachment to those college degrees or those particular vocations. And so there's like the sunk cost applies differently, but YouTube is something that, like, when it starts doing well, it's a thing that's specific to you, and it's something that that only you have. And I think how do I put this? I think it's like succeeding on YouTube is like validating because it's you. And it's thousands of people saying they want more of the thing that you specifically make, and you can see it as a number growing, and people very specifically are supporting what you do and saying they want to see more of it. And so even when you have a small following that's not monetizable and can't actually change your life necessarily, you still, like, feel really attached to it. And so that's why you'll see a lot of YouTubers that can't do it for a living, which was me for years and years, still sticking it out and doing it despite that, because they've already amassed some kind of following in many cases that, like, they feel somewhat, like, accountable to and responsible to or something, and they care about them and they don't want to let them down and stuff like that. And, like, that's like a whole thing that more or less happens. And so that's part of why I was sticking it out and why I couldn't just let it go when I knew that it was not the wisest application of my time, generally speaking. And then you hit a point eventually where you're like, oh fuck, job. Because I had graduated college. I spent the whole year looking for a job, which was agonizing because there's just you don't get feedback when people don't hire you, especially if they don't even so much as to give you an interview, which is what was mostly happening. Like, you straight up feel like, is something wrong with me? I don't understand what's happening. I fit the requirements. I remember at one point I applied to a Chevron refinery, and it was an entry-level position, and I got, not only did I get declined explicitly, they explicitly declined me within 24 hours, and I was like, wait, how did I get filtered out instantly? Was I late somehow? Did they already pick the person for it, even though that shouldn't, the timeline doesn't line up that way? Or is there something so explicitly wrong with my application somehow that, like, they can't take a college graduate for an entry-level position? I don't know. Am I overqualified? Am I underqualified despite the fact that I'm clearly not? Am I above the requirements for the job, but there's so many people applying that I'm below the requirements of the filter they're already applying to it? Like, it was such a weird experience trying to get a job in California, anywhere related to my field. I finally got my job at the water board, which was kind of miserable because I was basically working as, I was doing what used to be an intern job basically, but they just made it look more official and started hiring people that are more qualified for it. But that just meant they were hiring people that were overqualified, and so it was just a really boring job that didn't use any of my knowledge or skills, and I was just managing Excel sheets all day, and I was like, what am I doing? And I don't even feel like this even helps my career because it's not even applicable experience besides just being in an office, I guess. And I was bored out of my mind to the point of, like, actually, like, Googling depression and Googling cubicles and finding out specifically that the guy who invented the cubicle in the first place regrets ever coming up with the cubicles because he thought that he was making, like, the Swiss Army knife of office spaces. Like, it's just this really cool, versatile, awesome thing that was going to revolutionize office spaces. And he underestimated that capitalism would morph into something horrifying. And so instead, so he's like, he doesn't like what his own invention became, because he just thought it'd be a cool desk, basically, that would be real useful, like a Swiss Army knife, and just would serve all your purposes. There's all these shelves and compartments and things. It's just it's better than, he was just, you know, thinking of something better than working at a flat table in the middle of a room, which is what offices kind of used to look like. Or at least that's what my takeaway of watching Agent Carter was, that the police office was just a bunch of people at flat counters in the middle of a large room. And I'm like, huh, honestly, that's nicer. Even though it's a little weird that people can always see you all the time, and everyone can. But I think that's closer to how a lot of police areas work today anyway, maybe? I don't know. But he's like, oh no. Instead, the businesses took my invention and just used them to cram as many people into a small space as possible, because they put every cubicle end to end across a room until they just crammed as many people into a small space as possible, just to maximize how many workers you can fit into a rentable location to maximize profits and stuff like that. And that's now how, like, every office space works, is just this horrible cubicle farm where everyone just has their tiny space where they have a pretend room that's with no windows and no exposure to other people, and all line of sight's blocked so you don't socialize or engage with other people, so your brain just rots and you just get sad every day, basically. Great feelings. I don't think I've ever experienced actual depression, but that was the one time where I was actually, like, Googling things about it, and that's when I found out that, like, the guy that made cubicles in the first place hates their existence now. Although a lot of people hate their creations, especially when their creation becomes some culture-spanning thing. But yeah, I definitely came to the conclusion that I hate cubicles, because boy oh boy, is it just miserable to sit in there. Especially since I had a job that nobody else had to interact with me. I was just doing these things where I would receive my order digitally, basically, and then I would submit it digitally. And the most I ever did was engage with other people for question purposes, or sometimes I'd find out that there was a meeting I was supposed to go to, but really most meetings, even the company-wide ones, I didn't even have to go to, because I had so little engagement with wider company culture on any level, and none of it was relevant to me. The few meetings I did go to, I literally had no idea what people were talking about for basically the entire meeting, and I was just sitting there trying not to fall asleep in public, which I failed at least once. I just fell asleep in it. It was a very large meeting where it's a bunch of people sitting in like a auditorium setting facing one speaker and stuff like that. So it's not like falling asleep at a table that everyone's sitting around necessarily, but I definitely fell asleep because I literally didn't know what anyone was saying, and it was like 90 minutes of not knowing what people were saying, and I'm like, I could be getting work done right now. One of the best saving graces I had was the fact that I had a coworker that had very similar interests to me. He was the other person in my position. He trained me to do my job, and also presumably had to train whoever replaced me, because there's probably an assumption that they probably think that everyone in that position is going to be like a revolving door situation, where everyone's going to come and go over the course of like a year or so, and so whoever's still there trains the new hire each time on how to do their job. So my coworker trained me how to do my job. It wasn't my boss or anyone else like that. It was the other guy that does my job trained me how to do my job, and we were just doing the job in parallel. We were basically just taking the orders from different clients, but doing the same job, which is that we were basically doing QA on reports to see if the reports were done correctly. Which is like, it's as boring as it sounds. Basically, we're in the irrigation field for water quality, and basically there's all these there's regulations in California about what you can let seep out of your farm into the water supply. And so you set up these measuring stations that measure the water coming out of the farm from runoff, and just tell like how much like pesticide is getting into it, or are these substances in it, and other stuff like that. And like Californian farmers and so on are expected to self-regulate their runoff so they're not poisoning the environment and stuff like that. And so these reports are the self-generated reports, because you can either have the state appoint someone to monitor your stuff, or people can monitor themselves. And so the ones we were dealing with are people monitoring themselves. And what we do is we get the report that was already made, and we basically just have to do QA on it to figure out if it's actually a viable report and does all the things it's supposed to do and so on, and flag all the things that are wrong with it, which there was always things wrong with them, and some people were way worse than other ones. So I wasn't even actually the guy that goes to like the farms to be like, your thing is, you're poisoning the community. Like, no, I was literally just getting the already finished report and then telling them where they fucked up at the report. And you learn some interesting things there, like you learn about blanks and stuff like that. That, like, all these different steps involved in the process of taking samples that verify whether the samples themselves are controllable. Like, you have the idea of, like, a blank is a sample that you have with all the other samples where you don't take a sample. It's just basically empty. Or no, it's basically just water. Like, it's like just clean water that you did not take as a sample, but you stored it with all the other samples. And then if something happens to that sample, like when you test everything in the lab batch and to see what's in them, when you're testing the other ones, you also test the blank. And if the blank doesn't come up as the expected result, then you're like, oh shit, this entire batch is fucked then, because the thing that's not supposed to be a positive is also a positive, so we can't trust any of the results of any of this stuff. And so we don't do that either. That's just what they're supposed to have already done and included in the report, is stuff like that. And so I was checking for those kinds of levels of QA, of whether they had done their... I was basically QAing their QA, because like they have to self QA, but I have to verify that they did it or not. And that was basically my entire job every day. Partly because someone couldn't fucking file their paperwork, and that was a nightmare, because when I was originally hired to do field work. In addition to that, I was going to be split between those two, and I was way more excited about the field work. I had to get a physical to prove that I was good for being in the field, which was stupid, because when I went to the doctor, he was like, yeah, you're good. And then he signed a paper, and I'm like, alright, cool. Because he's like, what the fuck? You're like 25. Fuck off. You have 2 legs and 2 arms. Everything's fine. Like there was nothing. There was nothing. The primary thing that came of that was that I asked him about my ears, because I felt like weirdly like there was like a blockage in my ear or something, and it's just been something that's been bugging me, because if you feel like something's wrong with your ear, you can't check it because they're on the sides of your head, and that was driving me crazy. And I was like, can you just do the ear thing? I didn't know what to call it, but they have like the ear thing where they stick a thing in your ear and they shine a light in it and they like microscope your ear. They used to do it when I was a kid. It happened every time I saw the doctor. They just stuck the weird thing in my ear, and I was like, could you just check real quick to see if there's like anything in my ears? And there was nothing. And he told me like, oh yeah, there's a thing where some people have like small ear pipes or whatever the fuck that, or like they get crinked, or like sometimes they just kind of pinch or block or something, and it's like nothing's in them and it's not an infection, but just the thing itself is like, it's just you're a mushy, shitty human, and so things kind of like mush and shit themselves sometimes. So now I know from here on out, so I can be less paranoid about it, at least, that whenever I feel paranoid about whether or not something's in my ear, like, if it's that familiar feeling, I know, oh, that doesn't actually matter, everything's fine. It's just my fleshy human face being fleshy and human and moving around and fucking up sometimes. Because I hated that feeling. I hated thinking something was in my ear, like, all the time. I hated it. So at least that was that small victory. But as far as the physical end was involved, like, he just immediately signed the paper and was like, yeah, whatever, get out of here. Like, it was no big deal. And I'm like, this is weird, right? But like, that was no big deal. I got that out of the way. I took that into work, and the fuckers, they just didn't file the paperwork. I didn't get cleared for a field work until like 9 months into me working there, because the people just didn't verify the paperwork. Like, they didn't file it, they didn't send it to where it was supposed to go. It just sat on someone's desk, basically, not being dealt with. And so I didn't get to do field work for the vast majority of me working there, because I never got cleared because somebody didn't do their job, more or less. Once again, I'm just filing this stuff away until later so I can do it between questions or something to deal with all that stuff. But that was intensely frustrating. Do I have a third row yet? Yay! Hooray! Third row. That's what I wanted. There we go. That was intensely frustrating because the fieldwork was actually much more entertaining, because that's when I got to start collecting samples. Because when you talk about the government doing the samples for you, we went to a bunch of small farms and we'd go to like the runoff locations and we would like basically just scoop up water samples to see if they were poisoning the water and stuff like that. And it was a generally pretty enjoyable job. I was actually having fun with it. It wasn't my full-time job. I only did it on a few days every now and then, so it didn't fix the fact that the rest of my job was incredibly boring. But basically, I would just get in a truck and go with a friend. Well, we began as coworkers, but we became friends. I would just hop in a truck with a coworker, and we would just sit around in this car and talk for hours. So yeah, if you guys like these Q&A sessions, I've had these with some random coworkers. Have had these for fucking entire weeks at a time. I think I had like 4 different coworkers I'd be in the truck with. I also was never driving because there was always a more experienced person doing the job that knew the routes better anyway. So I would just be sitting in the passenger seat and we'd just be talking back and forth and hanging out until we got to each of the sites, where we both hop out and do our 2 separate jobs, where they would use this complicated machine where they just they would throw like a sampling wand into the river that was attached by a wire to the machine, and they would just take a bunch of readings. And I don't remember if they wrote them down or if they printed them out, but they were basically just taking computer readings, where I was taking actual physical samples, where I would be taking, we just had this cooler filled with jars, basically these plastic jars, and I would just fill them with samples, and I would fill them all with samples, and I would plop them all into the I just would label them. They'd all be pre-labeled for where they were supposed to be, the samples were supposed to be taken from, and we would just get shit done, basically. And then we'd hop back in the car and drive to the next place after I took all my samples. And, you know, there's the blank one of each group that you're not supposed to put a sample in, and that affects whether all the batches are valid. Like, so for the first time, I was on the sampling end of all these spreadsheets I was doing, because I was seeing the same applicable ones. I'm like, this is neato, for once, to finally see the other end of everything. I'm so far off topic on these answers to all of today's questions so far. I might have to answer... this is around the time where I want to end these episodes, but I might answer another question just to feel like I answered more than 2 questions. You're welcome to give me your feedback on what you think about this stuff. I am still doing that thing where I kind of go to all related subjects a lot of the time, where somebody asks a question and I springboard off to all the other related stuff about it. Potentially answering all the follow-up questions, maybe. Or I'm just boring people and talking about a bunch of stuff that people don't care about, or something. But yeah, I was working that job for a year. And then I hit the point where my Patreon and my YouTube were paying me more than the job was. And I was like, you know what? I hate it here. So I just put in my 2 weeks, like, hey, I'm leaving. Better look out for a new person to hire and all that. And they're like, oh, sad to see you go, and all that other stuff. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And I fumbled my way around awkwardly, being like, yeah, I'm gonna be I think I basically explained it as being like a freelance video editor, is where I went with my explanation, more or less. It's like, yeah, it's a thing I've been doing on the side, and it's actually started making me noticeably more money than this has, and I'm just going to try to focus on that full time, because 2 jobs at once has been stressful and everything, and that's basically what I went with. And I mean, freelance video editor is on some level not entirely wrong. I do edit videos professionally, and that's required for every video to come out. Freelance is probably not an accurate thing to say, because it's actually self-employed, as in, like, I do the videos, they're my videos, they're not other people's videos. If you're a freelance video editor, you're probably editing somebody else's videos by definition. But I just basically, whenever I talk to people that are not my friends about my job, I usually don't say YouTuber, mainly because I don't want them to find my YouTube channel. Like, I don't actually want my old boss from the water board to, like, specifically find and try to make sense of the weirdness that is me making money off of making videos where I play video games and so on. It's cool if people already understand or even respect that and stuff like that, but a lot of people are like, will inherently be mistrustful or judgy of that kind of thing, and I don't even want to get in that conversation. So I'll talk about a freelance video editor, or like I'll be a Google contractor and stuff like that. I'll totally paraphrase things just to make it easier to not have to deal with justifying the existence of my income, which is basically what I have to, I find when I talk to older people, I basically have to do that. They just use you as the jumping off point to judge everyone like you, and you have to prove the validity of your income so that in your, you know, like, because we're so fucking tied to this idea in capitalistic society that like our entire livelihood and worth is directly tied to how valid our job is and our standing in society and so on, that if whatever that isn't good enough, it's like you're somehow lesser or whatever. And I hate those conversations, so I just have like trained myself to avoid them with people that I don't like enough to actually have those conversations with. God damn it, I can never remember where the person is here that actually repairs things. Is it just Farah? It is. She's right there. I'm an idiot.
Blessings to you.
That's my whole bounce around. If I could pick a different field of study or work, I mean, because that was also part of the question, by the way. You might try to remember that question from an hour ago. I mean, I might want to have a job. I'd probably prefer to have gotten a degree in film. Like if I just retroactively knew I was going to end up here, then oh my god, this thing's full. Give me the cube so I can clean this shit up. If I go into in this question just knowing that this is where I'm going to end up, presumably, then I'd want to get a degree in film, or video editing or filmmaking, or like that general stuff, because I'd be more equipped for dealing with like live action and stuff like that. I'd be more equipped for editing. I'd be more equipped for training myself with like understanding, like processing narrative flow and just a bunch of things that are just more applicable to this job than geology. It's fun to, I've made use of it in that I've got my, you know, we do our jokes where it's like, haha, memes, oh, that wasn't the one that gives you a fourth row? Shit. We do the whole jokes about, you know, I'll recognize certain things. I'll shout out Colin for joining here and there. It's because I don't want to have a catchphrase. I don't want to have a catchphrase, but there's like a certain requirement within YouTube audiences to have like something to latch onto. So instead of having a shitty meme or a bad joke or a thing where I make up a weird name for my audience, or having a weird nonsense thing I shout, I just do the equivalent of calling out a Wilhelm scream when I see it, but in the form of, you know, level design. And I let that be the closest thing to any of that, because I'd rather that than the alternatives. But aside from that and a few call-outs, which, yeah, some people like those conversations, but my job, there's degrees I could have taken that would be more applicable to this job than the one I have, which is 0%. The entire value my current degree has to this job is just the fact that I can, it's really just the fact that I can, in fact, have a few stories here and there where I can just recite the information I learned from a thing once. But that's a well that runs dry fast, by the way. Like, first of all, I've now been out of my college degree for longer than I was in it. I haven't been out of college for longer than I was in it, but I've been out of geology for longer than I was in it, and I've been out of... It's like when people like latch onto when I say something in German every now and then, but it's like I took German for 3 years, and then I TA'd for my German teacher for 1 year, and that was 10 years ago. Like it's very long ago. Now I'm probably like 3 or 4 years out of my 2.5 years in geology, so it's like The things I did know are all fading away over time from lack of use or usefulness, which my job was at fault for there too, because I guess I'm actually closer to 4 years out. But yeah, being unemployed for a year and then having a job for a year that used none of that terminology or information on any level definitely did a lot of damage already. And then now I've been doing this full time for 2 years, so it's like I'm probably like 4 years out of not studying geology, and it's never come up again. So I'm kind of just watching the degree melt before my eyes. But you know, make a living. But this is my post-mortem, I guess. This question ultimately became my post-mortem on my college experience, more or less, and what value it posed. Which is to say, it soaked up all my parents' college savings, and then I got lucky in a bunch of other ways I detailed in the past that stopped additional costs from happening, more or less. And so I kind of just got out of it being like, well, that was 5.5 years, now to pretend it didn't happen. Which is kind of what happened to that, is my end result of college was to then not use any of it, and I might never use any of it. At most, I might one day, if YouTube falls through or whatever, I might one day have to put an application somewhere where I could be like, I have a bachelor's degree, which puts me at the base level for being hired, basically. It doesn't even, like, give me an advantage. It just makes me not applicable to most jobs, because they just assume you have a bachelor's degree now, and lo and behold, I do. GG, me. Hooray. That's pretty much it. I'm just gonna clear this room and then look up another question, because even though this is already too long, I can't let this be a 2-question video, can I? That bothers me. Hopefully the next one's not as long. It can't be this long. None of them have been this long. Have they? Oh, I guess the Jesse question was this long. I'm bad at this. How did I spend half an hour on the freaking would you do a live stream thing question? Oh great, this one's more of a fan mail than a question, so I'm just gonna read it all out, and it's like I addressed it a third, like I'll still do a third one, but this is like getting a 4th email in, so it's like I accomplished more. Hooray. I don't know if these when they're not clearly questions, I don't even know if they're cool with me reading them, to be honest. I'm not totally clear, because you know, it is still my inbox for people if they want to just talk at me, I guess, as opposed to ask questions, but it's also where all the questions go, so they kind of get mixed in there. There's no compromising information in it or anything, so I don't think it's really a problem. So it's like, yay, fan mail moments, right? Sure, this is probably fine. There's probably a better way I could set up the questions so that they're separate from normal messages, more cleanly or something. But this is the most straightforward way to do it at the moment, just because of the fact that, like, I think you can only send me a message if you're a Patreon subscriber and so on. Or at the very least, it's just something that's sort of built in. Like, if I set up a standard repository for it, people could still be sending me questions via that repository, even after they're not a Patreon subscriber, or even if they just hear about it through a third person or something. So it's like, this is more vettable, because you're sending me the message via your Patreon account, at least. We could potentially convert it to you could ask the question on the comment section of the Patreon, of the Q&A video. Like, you could ask the question on the previous Q&A video in the comments, potentially. That's one way of maybe doing it. That still is only visible to Patreons, but aside from that, I don't have a great plan. Anyway, Yasmine says, I think it's a good thing you made the announcement. I've not surfed without adblock for 10+ years, to the point I'm amazed when I surf on mobile and get hit with a tidal wave of ads. Hey, you want to sell me a car or a cruise? Hey, millennial sob. Ever since I got young people rheumatism, gaming's been a lot harder, so I've watched hundreds of hours of your content ad-free. I guess I was naive. You hear all these YouTubers and streamers advertise their Patreon, hey, subscribe, help me keep the lights on, and donate, etc. But you think, hey, these are the booming new industries, right? Only millennials, the only millennials who are still crushing it, or whatever. And I didn't realize until after your refreshing honesty that my not contributing and thousands of others too could lead to you being uncomfortable. But I especially love the part where you said $1 equals thousands of views. So here you go. I'm your Patreon now. Sitting here in my 3.5 meter by 3.5 meter room thinking about what could help on factually the hottest day in Belgium since readings began in 1833, because God, I can relate, especially the heat and not sleeping thing. I have my computer running in my bedroom as well. Used to have a swivel fan, but boy oh boy, it was like trying to fall asleep inside of an oven. What I eventually did was buy a used standalone AC unit on wheels with for some boomers for 150 euros. It's heavy, loud, and out of the back blows the fires of Mount Doom, but hey, it helped. I have it set up on the doorway with the bathrobe hanging in the doorframe above it to block the heat. Yay, the dredges of millennial luxury lifestyle. I put it on and off during the day, mostly to let the lava hallway cool back down, but I make sure to run it for over an hour before I go to sleep, and it does help immensely. So thank you for all your hours of hard work. I know it's cheesy, but they do matter and make a world of difference to the people all around this little blue ball drifting in space, including me. These are always fun to read, because it's like it's often like a person you've never met before or never heard of before or encountered, or maybe you have and their name is lost in the memory spam of all the names. But then you're just like, yeah, here's the story about how, like, you matter to me, and I'm like, and it's like it's so different from the average comment, because when you're on a YouTube, it's just people being like, how are you so blind? What's wrong with you? Do you even know how to play video games? it's like nobody's happy to be there in the comment section of YouTube. So it's a real trip to see these. I don't think there's a lot to discuss there, but it's kind of fun to read through. Okay, this one's probably a fitting one to end on today. It's timely, it's relevant, and so on. Jenna Paikowsky asks, I just saw that Andrew is leaving. Happy for whatever direction his life path is taking him on, but is it true that you guys only got through VLR? Is that it for the Zero Escape series, or would you play through the third game on your own? So this is a question I've been dealing with a lot, and I don't currently have an answer, but I can express to you my various thoughts I've had so far and where I am on this right now. Because it's not an easy question to have. I mean, it's not an easy question to answer at the moment. It's like, yeah, we're 2/3 of the way through a series, and Andrew's leaving. And that's not good news. Also, you guys haven't seen this yet, because you haven't reached there, but, like, in the finale of Virtue's Last Reward, Andrew loudly declares he will not play the third game. So, like, I think even if he was still around, at least where he is right now mentally, he does not intend to play the next game. Like, he was just not into it. And, like, by the end of this one, he was like, no, fuck this. And in fact, I had to talk to him off camera before the farewell stream, where we were talking about, like, what we do and don't enjoy and stuff like that, and I was like trying to get a glimpse, because like because I don't always know what's going on with his head, so like I was wondering, like, hey, like, have you enjoyed running a YouTube channel and stuff like that, because he goes in and out of thinking certain things about that stuff in general, and his takeaway was basically that he's generally enjoyed doing this across the board, and he is on the same channel as me, where he can, like, enjoy playing a bad game and hating the game and talking about the game being garbage and so on and everything, with stuff like Sonic games and Alone in the Dark. Like, despite everything, we're both like, yay, happy that we played Alone in the Dark 2008 and Sonic the Hedgehog games that we thought were terrible, because we both enjoy on the same level that process of just going through a dreadful game, and that's all there, and we agree on that. Where we don't agree on that, apparently now, is Zero Escape, because I'm totally game for just powering through and going through the entire series despite everything. I'm like, let's do this. And Andrew is evidently not, because he has loudly and repeatedly declared over the last few weeks that he is not doing the third game, and that's seems to be regardless of the fact that he's moving too. I think he's just done. I think it broke him, like, ultimately, and he can't do it anymore. My assistant died. I need to fix that. So I think even if he was still around, unless his mind changed over the course of the next year or something, I don't know if he would ever play the last Zero Escape game with me, which is a bummer. But I mean, I can't literally force other people to do things, and I personally value finishing things I start, but I can't force everyone else to value that equally, especially when they don't make money off of the thing and it's not their job. Like, even if they knew going in that I like to finish things, I can't necessarily force them to keep doing it based on the inherent promise that I like to finish things, and they knew that going in or whatever. Like, you can only do so much to just force other people to do things, and it's like I'd rather maintain a friendship than force him to do a thing he absolutely doesn't want to do, and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of the channel we've been on lately with that stuff. It's not great. But yeah, he's moving anyway, so it's rather irrelevant. As far as eventualities of him recording with me in the future, I don't know how likely that is. I'm trying to think. In the more immediate future, when he's in Dubai, Andrew has his own issue, which is that he struggles to recreate the sort of feeling that we get when we record Let's Plays locally. When we're in a room together, there's a specific brand of thing that we've done for... Can I not carry more... I can't carry more money? That's a thing? Oh, right, you can only carry 10... you can only carry like 10,000 gold per character level or something like that. I think that's a rule. I can't pick up any more gold. I need to go spend it. Huh. But yeah, Andrew has historically not been great at recording Let's Plays online. He's done okay at podcasts in the past where we're just talking, but he's bad at looking at a video game that's in front of him and talking to people over the internet and doing like commentary with any kind of like chemistry or interaction to it. It just historically has not worked out well, and that's been unfortunate. One of the first instances of it, like recently, we had a weird recording where he joined us for the WoW series with Marty and Nick, and Marty and Nick are already not Let's Players, so their commentary is already mixed. Especially, I think Nick. Marty kind of gets what I'm going for most of the time and tries to help, but, you know, doesn't have experience trying to sort of carry conversations or whatever like that as like a performance or whatever. That, like, it's a really weird thing to try to express to people. Like, it's all foreign and weird to him. So like, and I get that. And Nick doesn't catch on nearly as much. He'll just be silent for like huge chunks of time and not really make any effort to push things forward. And weirdly, Andrew was like the worst commentary of them all during that recording, where like he was just silent for huge chunks of that like 2 hours, and then like grumbling to himself and kind of like mumbling things to himself and like in his own world. And I'm like, it's just he something doesn't click, where he's not all there for the commentary when he's not physically in the room with the other people, or like he exists in his own little world where he just like mumbles to himself and stuff like that. And it's just a weird thing I've noticed, and he knows about, because I've talked to him about it and everything. Like, this isn't me talking about him behind his back or anything. He's well aware of this stuff too. In fact, there was a very common occurrence when I record stuff with Andrew over the internet, is that if we're doing it with another person, the other person will then come to me afterwards and talk to me one-on-one, being like, is something wrong with him? Or did I do something wrong? Like, what was... Because, like, Andrew makes people think that he's angry at them because he's just weirdly acting out of character as far as everyone's used to in those moments, and no one knows why it's happening. And I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just a switch flips, and he can't do it anymore the moment it's in that situation. It's weird. And so that's just like a whole thing that happens. I have no idea what kind of weapon to go for, but I at least want it to be one-handed, maybe with bonus damage. Ooh, a socketed one? That's two-handed. Let's just go with this. No. I have no idea how to compare weapons, especially with the whole, like, quote-unquote fast and slow attack speed and all that other crap. I'm like, I don't know how to cross-compare. but like, so he's been historically bad, so while I could create a convoluted thing where I can stream footage to Andrew of Zero Escape, and he could be watching me let's play it live, and he could do commentary that way, and in fact he's tried doing that in the past with like Naya and a few other people for stuff like Life is Strange. Generally speaking, he has a history of like kind of shutting down in those contexts, so I wouldn't trust the idea of trying to do it remotely, but it might be the only option if he ever comes around to it. Otherwise, there's the idea of like, maybe we could do it if he finishes his job there and is happy with the money he makes and happens to move back, or maybe this plan he has right now falls flat on its face and he moves back sooner than expected or something. And I don't know, I mean, if he happens to move back and I'm still living here and he just decides he's up for it now, then I would totally do it. But I don't know if that any of those variables will fall into place. In particular, because of the fact that, like, I don't plan on sticking around here forever. I would like to move on if I can, and moving on means that even if he moves back, I won't be here when he gets back. And then if, like, that creates its own problem, but then there's the next thing of, like, if he moves back, like, I'll probably be somewhere else. I mean, maybe there's a weird eventuality where he decides to move back to the US and I've moved to another state and we like become roommates or something because he chooses to move back with me as opposed to the house that he kind of owns, because I think he has a house that he owns that he's planning on renting out or something. All the adulting shit gets in the way and gets really complicated and makes it really hard to have any definite answer. And we've talked before in the like last episode, I think, was the one where I talked about how I don't really want to. That's a slow attack speed. Yeah. I think we talked about last episode how I don't like to make promises or declarations that aren't backed up by anything. So that's why I'm not giving you an answer here. But on some level, that's the stuff going on there. He doesn't want to do it, and we can't do it. So we're double screwed as far as finishing Zero Escape goes, and I don't know what to do about that. There's the possibility of other people, but I don't have any other people that have agreed to do it. I just have hypothetical people that might work out on some level, but I'm not psyched about them in general. On some level, it might be thematically appropriate that I recast Andrew and replace him with somebody else, and then we have this disappointing third episode where everything changes, because I think that's supposed to be kind of what happened with the game itself, with the fan base, is that it's like everyone's disappointed by it because it's not what they wanted from the Zero Escape games or whatever. I don't know. I don't have context for the criticism. I just know that people didn't like people that did like the first two didn't like the third one, which I've held on to as hope of like, oh, maybe I'll like the third one more, because they apparently it pissed off the fans. When last time I saw something that pissed off the fans, it was my favorite movie of the year, which is The Last Jedi. I love that movie, and it made people so angry, and I can't relate to why they're angry at all, because I'm like, I just see a great movie, and I'm not being contrarian or an asshole or anything. I just genuinely like the movie and don't understand why everyone else got such a different reaction from it. That's just the reality of that. So, maybe I'll like it more. I don't know. As far as recasting goes, which I think I'd prefer, because like I'm afraid of doing it alone. Because first of all, like, people get mad about the asides or the podcasty nature of the playthrough and everything, but like talking to somebody else keeps me engaged in that game. As much as it might seem like the opposite is true, it is such a long-winded game where you do nothing, and like, and I'm bad at dealing with like anime writing. Like I think of like the Tales of Zestiria and Berseria, and like I'm like trying to stay engaged, but like watching characters just talk to each other for 20 minutes at a time while being like cutesy and shallow with their behaviors and everything, like I really struggle to stay engaged and entertained during those moments, even when it's not particularly bad, which is the case sometimes in Berseria, for example. Like, there's cool stuff about the narrative, but like I find myself lagging as it becomes more and more just long-winded, and I'm not interacting with it, and I'm not making choices, and I'm not playing a video game. I'm just watching the story happen, and then I'm supposed to do a let's play, and it's just like me sitting in silence for 20 minutes at a time while people talk, then trying to come up with something to say afterwards. And sometimes you can really tell that I'm struggling to come up with anything to say because I'm just not that into it sometimes. That happens sometimes too with some of Vampire, which is less the Japanese writing and more just the long-winded nature of the game in general, and the fact that I know at some point I became more and more aware that it wasn't going to actually impact anything else. So I was becoming more and more aware that the long monologues were unrelated to the rest of the game, which made it even harder to care about them over time. Like it's way more enjoyable to play that stuff solo, not just for the audience but for me. And I'm more engaged with the mystery, even if I think it's bad. Like talking it with somebody else, like I'm more interested in what's going on, and I care, and I am engaged, and I'm piecing clues together and maybe misremembering stuff. But for everything I misremember, there's probably like 3 things that I remembered better just because of the fact that I was talking with another person. Because engaging with another person socially and processing the information with them and talking back and forth actually helps cement it, because you're using different parts of your brain to process the information as opposed to the more passive approach of doing it alone. So I think I actually understand those games better because I played them with somebody else. Even though someone will point to like you did this wrong and stuff, and that's why Andrew's a mistake and he ruined the Let's Play or something like that, which people actually say. But I think that just sitting there passively alone would be way worse. But then I think of my candidates, and my candidates are not great. I do not have a good list of replacement candidates for what is this? That's bonus life. I could kind of use more life, but it's max life. The damage doesn't even go up. Weird. Oh, because the damage is from this one. My candidates are not great. I look at them and I'm not excited. I would love to do it with Bird, but Bird would never, ever, 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 ever do it. Because, first of all, Bird would have to catch up on the previous 2 games, and that's not great. And he's probably up for talking mad shit and doing all the drama stuff the way that Andrew was, but 2 things have to happen. One, Bird has to catch up on 2 entire games, which is not going to happen probably. And also, I have to tear him away from the rest of the multiplayer group, which doesn't go over well with anybody, including him. Because Bird's schedule is so restricted, mostly because he overfills it with stuff. He was like, I need to do my 4 hours of piano practice and my vocal training and all these other things I value about myself, which is cool, but it means that he is incredibly limited on his schedule and is largely not available. And so every night we group, every night, like 4 or 5 nights in a week, our group meets to do multiplayer gaming, which is those streams and so on. And he basically has a window of 2 hours where he's free, and it's a hard limit where he leaves right when it's over. And we often don't quite start on time, so almost always those recordings are actually less than 2 hours long. And when they're around, and he values that time. It's his time for hanging out with his friends, because he's been hanging out with me and Wander and so on since 2013. That group of the 3 of us specifically have been doing that collectively, and so he values it for that purpose too. So pulling him away from that to just be with me, one, Wander doesn't have a person to record with then. And like that, I'm like dismantling that group for their purposes for months, because Zero Escape games are so fucking long. And then, all this stuff's in my way. Are you full? You're full. Get out of here. I'd be pulling him away from that group for months at a time for the purposes of recording a thing that he doesn't even really care about to begin with. And the commentary, like, I feel like me and Bird would be the best commentary option in a fantasy universe where it works out, because he'd probably be most up for the kind of commentary that I think that series needs if you're going to try to replace Andrew. But he's like the least accessible of all the options. Out of the other people I know, I just don't really know Durf very well, and I have no idea how he reacts to narrative-driven anything. So he's just a non-option at the moment because I don't have a basis on which to consider him. Most things with the Wander point towards negative. He's more accessible. He has more time. He could potentially, if he wanted to, let's play the first 2 games. He could maybe even do a let's play of the first 2 games with Shell, and then join up with me to let's play the 3rd game, and the 3 of us can go through the 3rd game together. We'd have to do the convoluted thing where we stream the game at each other in order to do it. Where one of us is running the game, and the other one of us is like watching it via some kind of slightly delayed stream, and that's like the best we could do. Or maybe someday we end up living near each other, and then we could do it locally on like a couch or something. That's not completely impossible. But we'd have to be permanently living near each other for that to happen. That's not like we did Dark Soul, we did a playthrough of Demon's Souls when he was on a trip and he was visiting, but you cannot crank out a game that long, that fast. Those games are agonizingly long. For me, the concern with Wander is less the accessibility and more the other elements around him. One, Wander streams constantly, especially during the hours where we're more likely to record stuff together. And I do not want to do any of these games in a streaming context. I specifically try not to even upload the Let's Plays of them until they're basically done, because of the fact that people just spoil them all the time. Like, literally the moment I put up episode 1 of the Let's Play, people were immediately spoiling things. And, like, people don't understand what constitutes a spoiler anymore. Like, they're really bad at it. Like, people that I thought would know better were still posting spoilers, basically, and they would just think they weren't. Like, we made a comment in the first playthrough, and the first episode, like, oh, that guy's older than that guy, or whatever. Like, it was a joke. We were just making jokes about half jokes, half like actual guessing about the future of the story based on just looking at the cast of characters. And then people like Thomas just straight up, like, they post reactions to our guesses that are themselves spoilers, and I'm like, this is why we don't post these videos while we're recording them, is because you guys can't react to them without spoiling things actively. Then you have the fact that, like, whenever we have any complaint or anything about anything, people that love the games will, of course, actively post spoilers to defend the games. Like, well, you just don't understand this and this, and then they'll just actively spoil the story. I'm like, you idiot. You idiot. God damn it. This is why, like, this is also why we don't do this live. Because, like, you're just spoiling the story for people. Like, fucking wait to the end of the playthrough if you want to fucking argue against us or whatever, which by the way, by then our opinions will have evolved because we have the new information. It's like, we don't have to be right about the entire future of the game when we say things during the middle of the game, but, like, we have to react while it's happening. We can't just be silent the entire playthrough. That's been a problem with the Xeriscape series, is people just say we are not allowed to have opinions until we reach the part where the information happens. But, like, it's an endless cliffhanger franchise, so, like, that basically means you'd have to play all 3 games back to back, then start having opinions after you've beaten all 3 games, because even Xeriscape, even Virtue's Last Reward just ends being like, I guess you'll have to find out how it all goes in the next game, and it doesn't actually end the story, and it's like, Jesus Christ, game. We played all this time and we don't get closure. It's a nightmare. But anyway, that's why we don't do. That's my issue with live streaming, is I don't want a live audience shouting spoilers at us, and I don't really trust anybody who has a live stream audience to not be looking at chat. Like, if they have chat open, I don't trust them to just be like, oh yeah, I'm totally not looking at it this entire 70-hour playthrough. I'm just never looking at chat a single time as they shout spoilers at me nonstop. So live stream part I'm not great with, but also Wander and I disagree a lot on, like, the quality of media and stuff like that, and those disagreements often are not happy disagreements. Like, Andrew and I can just argue about things casually, but I get a very strong sense from Wander that he gets, like, almost offended by disagreements about whether a thing is good or not, and will, like, be bothered by people disagreeing with them on the quality of something at times. And also, I also don't think he's generally happy when I start criticizing something and just railing on something. Like, I don't think he is interested in being around when I do that. So my problem with Wander for as a candidate is that he's available, probably, and he might even be willing, potentially, maybe, but in practice, I don't think he'll be willing. Like, even if he agrees, like, yeah, do the thing, fuck it, I have infinite time, which he doesn't, but whatever. I don't think he wants to fill Andrew's shoes for that kind of thing, and I think that would generally go poorly, and he would not be up for that kind of stuff, especially since, like, I've repeatedly witnessed him zoning out during the story of games, and he'll just kind of press A lot and just get through it, and that's like the death of the format of our show. The other candidate I've thought about is Colonel RPG. There's a YouTuber called Colonel RPG, which you may not know very well because he does not show up on the YouTube channel very much, but he guest starred on the podcast twice because Bird or someone was missing. And we're like, hey, we have an extra slot. Hey, Colonel RPG, you want to come on? Because he was just kind of floating on the rim of everything all the time, and so he's like somebody we could bring in every now and then on the podcast. And he seems fine, and more importantly, he has been actively commenting in the comments of the playthrough all the way throughout. So in addition to being a YouTuber and someone we know already, he is somebody who actually watches the series, so he's already caught up. So problem solved there, right? But there's two problems with Colonel RPG. One is I've only done one Let's Play with him ever. I played Viking Squad with him and Bumpy McSquigums. It was a little outreach. Outreach sounds like it's a weird thing that I'm like gifting people with, but like it was a thing I did where I just wanted to try to collaborate with some channels that I have interacted with very little, or not at all, I mean, but I keep seeing. Because oftentimes when I search the games that I play on YouTube, the Horadric Cube, oftentimes I'm looking up a game like The Fall of the Dungeon Guardians or something like that, which is a game I've mentioned a weird number of times in this Q&A series, I think. I will often find myself finding their channels over and over again, so I was like, hey, why don't we collaborate for a thing? Because and lo and behold, they knew who I was because I keep coming up in related searches with their channels all the time. So like we just kind of all knew each other in the background, or that we knew that each other existed, and I was like, why don't we just make content together and try that out? I did a very low risk playthrough, which is why I was Viking Squad, because I was like, I don't know these guys, and I don't know if our commentary will suck, or if we won't get along or whatever, so I didn't want to like just try something risky like Divinity Original Sin or something and commit to like a 200-hour playthrough with people that I barely know, where we might not actually get along that well or have that much like dialogue chemistry or whatever was the concern. So I tried a little disposable thing. I actually haven't had any contact with Bumpy since that, but Colonel RPG has been in the Discord and in my comment section and so on, and been on the podcast twice, and he seems to just follow the channel. I don't know if he can see these or not, so I don't know if he even knows about this. But I haven't... The problem is that the one Viking Squad playthrough didn't necessarily serve its purpose. I still haven't spent the many hours with him to be like a friend and feel comfortable with all that stuff the way I might otherwise. So that's a bummer. That's kind of the ideal, would be to, like, ideally I would do something like that with somebody I really know, because then we're comfortable with each other and it's all going well and so on, and unfortunately being introverted and all that, and also all my friends moving over time, I don't have the best pool of people for that. A few years ago I knew more people that might have been better candidates for that kind of thing, and most of those people are pretty much just all gone now, and that's just unfortunate. But that's the reality for me. So maybe in some future Colonel RPG might be a better candidate, but right now I'm not totally confident with that idea either, and I'm not sure what to think about that. But maybe. Look at all this emerald I'm mixing together. This is what. So now you guys that haven't played this before are learning why I want this cube so badly. So that's pretty much my list of options, and it's kind of, it's just there it is. It's already depleted that quickly. It's not great news, but I don't have great replacements for Andrew. And why do I want a replacement for Andrew so bad? Because I I don't want to do it alone. I guess I already explained that a moment ago, is that like I think playing it with other people made it more engaging and kept me more on track and made the whole experience more enjoyable for virtually everyone involved that didn't want to just quietly watch it as a no commentary game. I mean, there's people that would really rather have no commentary, but those people are idiots. Specifically the ones that keep sticking around. I keep having people, like, there's one insufferable person I finally muted because they were just constantly being toxic in the comments, and I was like, I'm done with you. Because at one point I was like, what, would you rather we just don't talk at all until the entire story's over? And he was like, oh man, please don't be a lie or whatever, or please don't be a joke, like, crossed fingers, hope that happens. I'm like, dude, fuck off. If you want to watch a silent playthrough with no commentary, then watch a silent playthrough with no commentary. They already exist. They were there before we started, because we're late to these games. Like, if people don't want us, they don't have to have us. But so many people are weirdly, like, don't want us in there. So those people will be pleased to have not Andrew, because they're closer to the no commentary version where I don't speak either. But those people, what the fuck? That's the wrong people to cater to. But yeah, at the moment, I don't really have any good solutions for pleasing the audience that likes the series as it is right now. I'm kind of in a rut where I'm kind of screwed, and as people have expressed already, even at just the idea of it being me without Andrew, let alone replacing him, there's definitely already been people thinking like, oh, it just won't be the same, and that's true, and I'm kind of screwed. And I don't begrudge Andrew that, because these playing all 3 games in a row takes like years. Our playthrough takes so long, and as it was right now, like, we were already being hobbled by the realities of adult life and everything. So we were having to deal with like the fact that I have to commute to his place in a different town in order to record, which takes all day. So like, we only could record once a week because we both had to, you know, do our normal work. I had to run my channel all week, and in fact I had to do more work every day than normal because I had to make up for the fact that I was doing a whole day of work that wouldn't be seen on the channel, because stuff like Dark Souls wasn't getting aired until I knew it was going to be done, and I wasn't airing Zero Escape and 999 until we were about done with them, because I didn't want people to spoil things, and also because our recording rate was at a speed where I didn't know necessarily if we'd be getting more than a week's worth of videos done each time we sat down to record. So if I started airing them right away, then there'd be gaps in the upload schedule and stuff like that. So like, I mean I had to work extra hard the rest of the week, because I was basically spending an entire day not working, essentially, even though I was working, because it wouldn't be added to my output and so on, and all that noise. That's a thing. So, this is so satisfying, by the way, just cleaning up this inventory. I've never had so many gems. They must have increased the drop. I feel like they increased the drop rate or something in this mod, because there's so many gems. So yeah, I don't know, guys. There are several potential avenues to pursue. All of them are less good than just having Andrew around, and none of them are the right answer. And I might have to pick one day. Or maybe that we'll never finish it. I don't know. I want to finish it. The question is, should I wait potentially months or years for the possibility of a better option coming up? Or just bite the bullet and like 6 months from now play it alone and then that's it. That was the one chance to play it blind, and it's over, and maybe a better option comes up later, but it's too late because I already played it at that point. I don't know. There's not a good answer for it, and it's not a great situation across the board. But like I said, I don't begrudge. I just used a portal on accident. I don't begrudge Andrew leaving, because it takes so long to play through these games, and people can't run their whole life based on whether or not they happen to have a YouTube series on somebody else's channel that's running right now. Because like, this isn't his job. He can't put his life on hold based on the idea that it might inconvenience one playthrough on my channel. So like, I get it, and I don't blame him, but yeah, here I am with no answer for you guys. Basically, I don't know what to do, and at some point I'll make a choice, I guess, or something. And I don't know, man. It's not great, and I guess that's all there is to say on that. This was a long one, but I got to 4 messages. One of them was just a thing I read, but still, you know, I'll get to more of them. Keep sending in the questions, because otherwise they dry up. And this happened with other series before too, where it's like at first it feels like we're going through them too slowly, but before long they just stop showing up, and so the slow rate still leads to us running out. Like on the, like that was the same paradigm on the podcasts, is that we would be going through them too slowly on both For Nerds and Sin Discuss, but we would still be stuck making less progress than we would hope to make on those podcast questions and everything. So I'm sorry, I meant like we were making less progress than we meant to, but then they would still dry up because people would stop asking them. So keep sending in the questions. You do that by sending me a message here on Patreon. Sorry for rambling so much and being so off topic, unless that's what you wanted, in which case, cool. See you guys next time, and thanks for your continued support.